Good afternoon. Welcome to Lube Trends. I see that we have a number of participants logging on, and we're going to give them a couple of minutes to get everyone online, and then we'll start the session. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. Hopefully the weather in your neck of the woods is not as beastly hot as it is here in Washington, D.C. I know our panelists are probably having much more pleasant weather than we are. I think a lot of the United States is under a big heat wave. At ILMA, we've been working on getting ready for the annual meeting. We have a very strong number of attendees, approaching a record. We're still, I think, 13 weeks out from the meeting, and we're just over 800 attendees. So that's very exciting. We anticipate the final number will be somewhere around 1,100. So if you haven't registered, I encourage you to do so today. Hotel rooms are still available. There is one night where that is sold out, which is Tuesday night. We're working on getting some additional rooms, so stay tuned, but please get your registration in as soon as possible. And I see we still have participants coming in, so we will give it a minute and then we'll get started. I do want to say that I first saw the speakers today at UEIL, and that was in, what country were we in?
I was in Athens. In Greece.
Oh, in Athens, that's right. And I was really impressed with their presentation, so much so that I approached them about coming to our annual meeting, and then we decided to do a series of presentations with them. A lot of people put a lot of time and strategy into product development, but they don't necessarily put the same amount of effort into the sales strategy. And that's what we're going to talk about some today. And I think I'm going to go ahead and kick this off. We still have a few people coming online, but while they come online, I can get introductions and all of that out of the way. My name is Holly Alfano. I'm the CEO of ILMA, and welcome to Lube Trends, ILMA's virtual town hall. As I mentioned earlier, we're discussing modern sales training, and what that is and what it entails. And we've got two experts in that area with us today. Steve Knapp. Steve, raise your hand there so we know who's who, is one of the UK's most celebrated and influential sales experts. A best-selling author and much sought-after keynote speaker, his inspirational sales techniques are still the cornerstone of Shell, one of the world's biggest brands. The Sheffield-based entrepreneur rose through the ranks of the multinational Shell to become responsible for the success of the company's sales teams right across the globe. In 2019, he made his pioneering teachings available to a wider audience via his Amazon best-selling book, Funnel Vision: Selling Made Easy, which won plaudits from some of the most influential voices in the industry. In 2021, along with his business partner, Rob Taylor, he co-authored Modern Sales Leadership to rave reviews from many international sales leaders. Also with us today is Rob Taylor. Rob Taylor has been at the forefront of digital marketing for 2 decades. He worked with Google to build a groundbreaking 8-week program aimed at helping businesses truly harness the power of emerging technology. The project now has helped hundreds of companies turn around their fortunes of their businesses with the introduction of digital marketing. Rob has also worked on Amazon's pioneering Dads in Business program, delivering online seminars to employees based around the world. Rob Taylor has particular expertise in helping companies make the digital transition, helping nationally renowned brands adapt to a modern marketing and sales environment. And of course, I mentioned before in 2021, he and his business partner co-authored Modern Sales Leadership, the book. I just want to take a minute to thank Chevron Oronite, our sponsor of this program. They have been a generous sponsor of ILMA Town Halls really since the very beginning. And I just want to thank this very valued partner of ILMA. I mentioned briefly that Rob and Steve are going to be at our annual meeting. Their session is scheduled for Monday, October 9th at 2 p.m. So if you like what you hear today, you'll be able to hear even a deeper dive at the meeting. So with no further ado, I'd like to turn this over to Rob and Steve. Thank you.
Super. Thank you very much, Holly, for those kind words and introductions. Thank you as well to Chevron Oronite for sponsoring the session, and to ILMA for inviting myself and Steve along to support your journey into modernising sales and our contribution to that. But most importantly, thank you to those that are joining the session this morning or this afternoon in what seems to be a very hot USA. I wish we could borrow some of that for us here in the middle of England as we join you this evening locally. Yeah, as Holly suggested, we are doing a session live at ILMA 75. We'll be delighted to be there in person. Hopefully we can bump into some of you guys joining the call there as well. That session will be complementary to this one. We are going to share plenty of insights and experiences around how we see a buyer's market changing and how perhaps sales could modernize and adapt to evolve with it. So please do have a pen, paper, notepad, iPad, however you take notes or consume information, please have something there at the ready, because we have lots of valuable insights to share over the next 40 minutes or so. Please do use the Q&A section as well to drop in any questions or burning comments or contributions to the topic. We've boxed off some time towards the end for a Q&A, so we'll look forward to answering some of those as we move forwards. We're going to discuss ultimately selling how your buyer wants to buy, and maybe that isn't how you want to sell. This is going to mean reviewing your approach to sales, your processes, your marketing, and ultimately your knowledge of the customer and how the customer is buying. The integration of digital can't be ignored within your sales processes. And ultimately, we think that this digitalization should complement the more traditional physical face-to-face sales process that some of you may be used to. We want to consider how your buyer wants to buy and build from there. And that's what we're going to share with you across the next period of time. Because things might have changed in the short term, 5 years. How have things changed? What have you noticed in your industries and sectors from your buyer's perspective? Things won't go back to how it used to be. So we must learn to adapt and listen to what our customers want if we're to succeed in sales moving forward. And to remain relevant, we have to reflect on the current sales practices, use the best, and adapt and innovate with the new. I mentioned about 5 years, but Steve, I think the more mature of our partnership, could you take us back a little bit further, if you don't mind?
I think you were being the sort of politest I've ever heard you refer to me as. But yeah, I'm probably going back 25 plus years now, maybe, well, more. In 1996, I joined Shell Industrial Lubricants. And after a very, very brief induction, I was thrown out into the industrial estates of South Yorkshire, Sheffield. Many of you may know that more for the steel sector. It was renowned for steel. My product knowledge, well, it was in my brochures. I had a full pilot's briefcase of all I needed to know. I was good to go. Actually, at that time, I was just prospecting one steel factory by factory, motivating interest. That's all I was really doing. Usually, all I was looking to do was replace competitor products with my alternatives. Innovation was probably just rationalization of lubricants, hydraulic 46 and 32 to a 37 centistoke product. That was real innovation. But before I did that cold call, what did the customer, the prospect, really know about me? And what did I really know about them? My sales behavior was by definition focused on filling a sales funnel and investing a lot of my time nurturing physical, real people relationships, helping people who are out of the market become aware of who and what I could offer, just really working hard to develop sales opportunities. My ability to develop these relationships was limited by the actual time I had. Slow sales cycles and a real push from me. Absolutely no pull from the customer. Maybe those of you who have done this cold calling know how hard that can be. The physical relationship approach is the most modus operandi in many of sellers and sales teams that you represent in this virtual room, I would hazard a guess. Perhaps your digital presence isn't where it needs to be. Perhaps your digital presence today is a good website. Maybe your brochure is online. But are you really adapting your sales approach to how your buyer wants to buy? Have you done enough? The days of the days of the professional B2B buyer behaving differently at work from their consumer behavior have gone. And B2B sales teams must adapt to that. You cannot expect things to go back to how they once were. So embracing a more digital presence to complement your physical presence is the way to go. Let's take a look. Could you ever imagine a world where this was going to happen? 80% of interactions being digital by 2025. We're mid-2023 right now. Think about where you are. How much have you embraced digital into your operations and your sales efforts and activities? Zoom, Teams, email, YouTube, websites, reviews, podcasts. The list goes on and on and on, grows daily. Buyers demand the right to research, and they have smart ways to protect their time. On a more personal level, think about the shift in your consumer behavior. Things that we value and things that were valuable and complex have migrated to a more digital method. I was once talking to a owner of a car showroom, and they told me that buying a car used to be up to 6 showroom trips. Now it's less than 2. I don't know how you can do less than 2, but they said it's less than 2, 1.6. If we're now buying a car predominantly digitally, what other things are we buying? When's the last time you bought a holiday visiting a travel agent? We used to, when I was much younger, have a day trip going to the travel agent, and it was a big event. Now we just book it online. We believe reviews from random strangers. Now, I've used 2 B2C examples, but we are seeing how large B2B environments are adapting and seeing this change as well. We know that if we've got between 6 and 10 people being involved in larger buying decisions, and that comes from Gartner, that piece, digital has an obvious and positive use for the more complex deals that you might be creating. But let me just say, even in this more complex deal, complex negotiations still require face-to-face. The point is, they will come much later in the buyer's buying journey.
You might have noticed as well, are your buyers somehow getting younger? 44% of millennial B2B customers will prefer not to interact with a sales rep at all. And to put that into some context, if you're unsure where a millennial sits, I'm 38 years old and I am a millennial. Have you seen more of me in your buyers' profiles? They are digitally native. We might be avoiding the phone more, but we are hanging around in digital spaces. We're informing ourselves. You might be ignoring upwards of half of your marketplace, because if millennials and Gen Zs are making up around 64% of B2B business buyers, if you're not online embracing that communication, you're missing out. Because buyers ultimately may see sales as a cost. The salaries, a car bonus. They want to eradicate unnecessary cost, which might put the price up, and therefore there's a risk that I'm commoditizing you. I don't want you at all because you're going to put my price up. We're fighting to commoditize products and services, and in most cases, it's an easy thing to do. We drive price conversations. We will hide in e-tenders, reverse auctions, and all the things that just hammer the price down. Your job, therefore, and the job of the sellers, is now to teach things to your customers, your potential prospects and buyers, that they can't research. If you do this well, they'll reach out to you when they're ready to start the conversation. And we'll show you why that's important later. Keeping your secrets behind the curtain is no longer an option. It can't be done. Steve.
Yeah, so keep taking a look at the slides as we highlight some data to reinforce our message. But we start to talk here about why teaching prospects and customers is so important. Because insight over information is in fact the currency in today's digitally dominated environment. Teach me things that I cannot Google. Show me you are bringing value to the relationship at an early stage, because 77% of buyers just won't talk to you until they are sure that you can solve their problem. Add value to them, create something positive for them. The point is, if they are researching, you need to show up. Be present where they research and connect directly with what they are searching for. Let's think about this. Do you promote who you are, how great you are, the tech specs of the product range you sell? Do you think buyers are really buying those things? Are you providing answers to their real questions? Second thing to think about is, what does your digital footprint look like? Does it directly mirror where your ideal buyer hangs out or go to search or research? Or are you waiting for them to come to you? Tell them your insights, not necessarily how you do it, but teach them the things they won't see from your competitors. So let's think a little bit about how digital and social aspect to sales actually starts to show up. Well, in real hard-hitting way, 90% never answer a cold call. But 75% will be using social media to make decisions. So have you worked out how to interrupt those buyers whose attention you're trying to grab? More and more, this is becoming social media. If you are not finding ways to grab their attention, they are not going to respond to your cold call. Rob's already said that buyers continue to look younger, maybe more in the image of him, certainly younger than me.
Clinging on to my youth.
And the truth is, they won't be ditching digital anytime soon. So much of a buying decision is made before you are even aware of the opportunity. Are you waiting for the scraps? Or are you present at the stage where digital and social media can help? Let's just take a real practical example. And as an example, LinkedIn is the logical place for B2B buyers to hang out. It's a logical place for them to go and research people, companies, and the values that they hold. How well represented are you and your sellers on LinkedIn? How active are they? And how much do you promote this as a valid approach to modern sales? Perhaps you're happy with them picking up the phone. Perhaps you're happy with them driving the miles around the state. So much of modern prospecting and relationship building is done in this digital sense, and LinkedIn is a great example for that.
And I think as you do continue the traditional things, driving around the state, how can you think or consider how digital can support that? We have to go from online to offline and offline to online, and a huge part of how we contribute to that conversation and relationship building is through the content that we share. So what content do you have that supports buyers researching themselves? Or is there a risk that you're falling into catalog sharing, brochure sharing, saying how experienced you are to a buyer who doesn't really care yet? 90% of buyers say digital content had a major impact on purchasing decisions, a major impact. It's a great way to teach and to build a holding pattern of engaged sales opportunities. It doesn't necessarily mean that everyone is ready to buy yet, but by building what we call a holding pattern of potential customers, one day when you are the position of trust and that buyer is ready to engage, guess where they're more likely to go? So consider, if you're making notes, think about how your content plays out currently. How does it support your sales force? How does it support your sales strategy? Is it generic? Is it the same as everybody else's and trying to serve all lubricant sectors? Is there a risk that your messaging falls into for all your lubricant needs, or are you talking to the needs of one? Have you considered how your content can feed the buyer's buying journey and have a good mix of educational content, personal and testimonials within the content? Or, if you're honest, is it more of pitching, selling you, the brand, rather than talking about the customer first? Some real opportunities to shift focus and be relevant to a modern buyer. If you've got the digital piece of our talk, but you zoned out when we mentioned social media, don't worry, you're not alone. Oftentimes, we do see folded arms and a few rolling eyes when we start to mention the dreaded social media, but we cannot ignore it as a valid sales channel. Key in on these stats. Social media delivers results. If you're active or your sales team are active on social media, using their personal representation, not hiding behind the brand, it's about 45% more sales opportunities coming through and 51% more likely to hit quota. Can you imagine a method that enables you to build and stay engaged with a network whilst you're not even in the room? It's crazy, isn't it? However, this has to be personalized. Sometimes, as we get over the social media hurdles, we can fall back to a safety net and say, this is the corporate message. This is what we share out. Trust is huge. It always has been, right? But trust in a noisy world is harder to get, and therefore we think it has to be more personalized. But that personalized trust is transferred now into a digital social media setting, complemented by physical. If you ever walked into a conference, a networking event, and it feels like you know the person already, you've never physically met. It's real, and it's happening before our eyes. not being present on social media is a real risk. And we think that it's a gap in these sectors, and it's one that's probably only going to get wider as we evolve and move forward with the Gen Zs and alphas coming through into the workplace. So really, don't be afraid of social media, but consider it as a valid sales channel and consider how content plays into that as we move forwards. But I think we have some recommendations that we want the guys to consider, right, Steve?
Yeah, we've spoken a bit about how the buyer's journey sort of has remained pretty much the same over the generations, but how long they spend in the different phases is the bit that's ultimately moved. So they spend a lot longer in what you would classify a prospecting phase, where they are aware of who you are and they're really researching and considering. So the reality is you're going to be longer in this phase than perhaps you even realize. You might not even know people are looking at you. This is one of the challenges with digital and social. But you should recognize that that buyer will sit in the aware stage, consideration phases in their buying journey, and you might not even know it. This is what you might classically call when the inbound phone call comes and they say, I've seen it, I know it, I want it. They've been looking, researching, stalking, and your content has been helping them make that decision. Your sales role, therefore, is something slightly different to what it was 25 years ago when I first started. They're much more informed. This does mean you have to feed that element of insight and nurture relationships digitally as well as physically. What I don't want you to take away from our presentation is that we are ditching the face-to-face element of sales. We absolutely and fundamentally believe it's an essential part of selling lubricants. The question you've just got to ask is, when does the face-to-face become more relevant and more effective and more efficient in your buyer's buying journey? And to be able to nurture relationships digitally as well as physically has to give you an advantage to stay connected, to reach more people, to share your message and your purpose. Ultimately, Rob has mentioned you're building this holding pattern of ideal customers and prospects who want to hear your messages. They want to hear what you've got to say, and you are teaching them things they didn't know. When they are ready to buy, and you would have seen in an earlier slide, 80% of a buyer's buying decision is made before they pick up the phone. They will come and reach out to you. It's going to take some courage, but it works. So part of this is about sharing content. The previous one was just a piece.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. Part of this is about sharing content that offers that insight, therefore that helps you stand out from the crowd. I really want you to think about this. Are you pushing content out there that is ultimately just the same as everybody else's? Or are you sharing messages that uniquely differentiate you from others that provide similar, same, or even better products and services? Think about how you share content that offers insight and not just information to stand out from the crowd. These 3 recommendations I think you should act upon, but there are a few more now here that we really think you could take away. Please put some questions in the chat box, because after this slide, we'll be moving into the Q&A session where we've got some good robust time to have those chats. What we really want you to think about is not discounting your traditional sales approach, but recognize where it fits in your buyer's buying journey. What does your buyer expect before they invite you to see them. At what point of the sales process will you invest that valuable asset of a sales rep's time to go and make the meeting? If we recognize that the buyer's decision is ultimately made and it's yours to lose, let's make sure we're sending them out with the right sales message, the right sales expectation to drive the right sales outcome. That they're not actually just going out there to somebody they think's a prospect, but ultimately they're ready to buy. Think about how we can drive efficiencies and effectiveness out of an integrated digital, social media, and physical approach to your buyer's buying journey. A key takeaway here, first step, your content plan. It must empower your sellers to engage effectively with the buyers earlier in their research. Don't hang around that consideration phase of the buyer's journey, waiting for the phone to ring. You'll be too late. The research would have been done and 80% of that decision would have been made. Get proactive, get nurturing those relationships, build trust early in your buyer's journey in the unaware-aware phases, so your sales team are not hanging around where your competitors are, waiting for something that's not going to happen. The last one, develop that social media strategy. It's called social selling. The social word is a big clue. There is an element of sociability with the work. It's about becoming known, not as a company necessarily, but as individuals, your sellers being known as individuals, becoming the trusted voice to help your customer educate themselves by using you and your capability as the authority. So these are the three takeaways. Don't discount your traditional sales approach, but recognize where it fits in your buyer's buying journey. Build a content plan that empowers your sellers to engage effectively with buyers earlier in their research, and develop a social media strategy within your sales process, because it's how your buyers like to buy.
Super. And I think just to round us off, if you can find out more research and insight and discussion points on our website. You can see there, Plan.Grow.Do.com. Search LinkedIn, as we've just mentioned, for Plan.Grow.Do. Steve Knapp, myself is on there as well, Rob Taylor. You can also email us for further resources and support. I do know this session has been recorded, and also we are sharing with you a PDF handout of the slide deck you can see. So if there were things that you were scribbling down as we moved along, don't worry too much. You can watch back on a replay and you will be sent a handout as well. But I think we're ready for some Q&A.
Well, we give it back to Holly now.
Yeah.
So if we stop sharing our screen, let us know that that's worked.
Yeah, so we do have a couple of questions in the chat, and I have some questions as well for you. First of all, we've got a question about your data from Gartner. Is it specific to the chemical lube industry surveying, or did Gartner pull from S&P companies in general?
Mm-hmm. Do you want me to start on that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's general B2B statistics and research points. However, what I would ask is if that 80%, I think it's the 80% of sales interactions between suppliers and buyers will be digital by 2025, is what the Gartner research suggests. I think it'll be that one that you're alluding to. I'd say if the 80% feels high, which for some industries it might, how far do you think this industry might deviate from the average? If that's going to be 5 points, it's still 75%. If you think it's 15 points, you're still 65%. This is a heavy majority of communication is going digital if it's not already. So take the 80% as the average, as the bar. If you think you'll deviate slightly from it, ask yourself how much, and then you might get an answer. Okay, it's 60%. What are you doing now to address 60% of your communication digitally? Or are there gaps that you can explore? So I think that's where I wanted to sort of take that one. Steve, if there's anything you...
We are working with Klein also around getting this data more specific to the lubes segment and sector, because it is a very valid point. It would be lovely to have this data that represents this sector. Absolutely, it would, and we will get there. I think whilst we might like to think of ourselves as different, there is an opportunity to get on the bus and get on the bus early. And I think that would be something I'd encourage, whatever the data is telling us, the consumerization of this is inevitable. But thanks for the question, Holly, because it's important to clarify what we share is across B2B. It takes from certain houses that we trust that the data is robust.
Okay, we have a question from one of our board members, actually, Richard Camper. Hi, Richard. When developing a digital strategy, it appears as if most approaches assume that a buyer's online behavior is the same personally as it is when they are at work. Do you believe that B2C concepts are applicable to the B2B world?
Super. Thank you for the question, Richard. Steve, do you want me to start?
Yeah, go on.
I mean, I mentioned in the presentation, the webinar, I am a millennial, which is a growing and only going to increase part of the buying market. I don't know about you, but I don't change my habits online when I walk into the office. They are part of me. I was brought up digitally. I grew up with the introduction of social media, and it has become so ingrained and intertwined in everything that I do, whether it's personal or whether it's work, that digital is just there. It's not a deliberate decision to use digital. We just do. It makes our lives easier. It makes our lives quicker, faster, more efficient. Decisions can be made. 80% of a buyer's decision is made before they meet you. That has to take part online. And it's thought that over 90% of every decision starts online. So whilst, yes, some behaviours may change in the workplace, but that might be more culturally led from the leadership who don't allow things to happen. I think as a professional, I want the freedom to be able to do it. And if I'm being told I can't do it, that might create more friction and barriers. And I just think the line between B2C and B2B is blurred at best. It's non-existent if we're being realistic. It would be my opinion. Steve?
I mean, I think it was a great answer, Rob. I think it's more about layers and levels to what you say. You know, every day we're confronted with choice digitally, and people of my age have become more sort of native with this stuff. I mean, you've taught me of our time working together to really consider this. And Richard, to answer your question, I would probably say we could track back 90% of our business to some form of digital intervention, interaction. And we're a B2B organization. So a small example, but yeah, we bring forward examples of the B2C in this space purely to try and show people that things that we thought were protected areas, having a holiday, buying a car, have started to become ultimately digital. And therefore, why is that not going to happen in a more B2B environment?
Yeah, and just on the first line around that digital strategy, I'd just say, put your customer right at the start of that. Yeah. And ask, when did you ask your customers about their buying habits? Consider that first, rather than sticking with what's entrenched potentially in the habits that you have.
Yeah, I like this question as well. And I can tell you, I am not a millennial, far from it, but I use the digital process to make almost every buying decision I make. I do some research in advance, and I think most of us today would do that. I have a question about LinkedIn content. You mentioned about being active on LinkedIn, and I want you to just dive into that a little bit more, because I think a lot of salespeople think being active means sending direct messages to prospects. versus culturing a network and developing real content that engages people. Can you elaborate on this a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is, I mean, LinkedIn didn't exist when I started selling, right? So let's be clear. This is something that we've grown up with, and there are some very, very poor behaviors on LinkedIn. And you know, we get these spam emails, we get this call to buy my stuff kind of messaging. You know, and just think about how we respond. We scroll on, we ignore it, we might even block the person. And I think this begins from a place, Holly, of really not understanding how our buyer buys. Because if we really understand how our buyer buys, and we accept that there's an element of social behavior in nurturing a relationship, which isn't always going to be physical now, it has to be digital. LinkedIn is a marvelous place to actually form pretty significant relationships where you build trust. Trust remains the currency that wins business. LinkedIn is just a way to create that trust, but you do that by sharing insight and not information, and being social versus functional. And I think these pieces really are starting to become new sales skills that need to be nurtured, because people see through it. As soon as somebody starts to spam you or try hard to sell you, you're doing more damage than you realize, because you're not going to get a second chance. So I think it comes with risk, but I think it comes with enormous reward if we treat it as a valid sales channel. We do the phone, we do email, we do networking, we do when we go conferences, we treat them as valid. Yet LinkedIn, we kind of don't yet see it as valid as those channels. It absolutely is, as an example of a digital social media channel.
Yeah, I actually went to a seminar on developing LinkedIn content, and you know what they suggested is that, you know, sharing information, preferably with a photo. You know, they had some really good strategies. Having your own comments on whatever it is, even if you're resharing someone else's post, you know, putting it in context for our industry, and then authenticity. You know, they talked about having a variety of types of posts, some of which are personal, so you start to develop a personality on the channel.
Sounds like you got some good advice there. I think a mix of content is really valuable. I mean, there is a massive clue, the fact we call it social media and social selling. I think the social word is pretty prominent. So I think there's a clue. And it sounds like you got some good advice there. And yeah, certainly when we come to ILMA 75 out in Palm Springs, we'll talk a little bit about LinkedIn and how that helps communicate the messages to your buyers. It won't be a LinkedIn session, but there will be a little around that.
Okay, I'm going to get back to some of the questions we got from members. Here's one. To solve the digital problem, do you need to train or hire to bring that new skill set in? Have you seen any examples, failures or successes in bringing in a tech-savvy new generation and deploying their skill set versus training the current workforce to be social media savvy? What is the best way you have seen to revolutionize your social media and digital marketing to align with the new social/digital sales marketing needs? Hire, train, or some sort of combo? What a great question.
There's a lot of questions in there.
Yes.
I mean, an anonymous attendee, I wish I had your name, because these are the sorts of questions that we absolutely love. It starts with leadership and strategy, because it's about believing. The digital problem is a problem that exists in most cases because the organization is fighting against the tide. The organization believes that the way we've always done things is the way we do things around here. And they've promoted people in the likeness of themselves. So the people that are leading people are people that behave like everybody else. So this challenge of digital is one that ultimately is never going to get confronted. And what you find is that staff end up trying to do it on their own, in their own time. They do it behind the curtain. They get a fear about what to post, what to say. They're fearful of repercussion. So there's a real strategy part here about, does the organization adapt in the very first slide or keep things the same? If you adapt, you're future-proofing your business. If you stay the same, good talent will leave, because good talent will recognize you're not innovating in the sales space. So big question. I think it's about having a clear strategy from leadership, recognizing this as an approach to market that your buyers want, and actually helping your sales managers who lead teams see this as part of their coaching role to help salespeople become more effective in this digital and social space. It also means that your sales organization has to entirely connect through to marketing. The marketing space and the sales space must work entirely hand in glove, recognizing customer personas, challenges of customers, and creating a real insight into what the customer is looking for from you as an organization. The skill set that you mentioned in the question isn't vastly different. It's not vastly different because it's about saying the right things, connecting with the right people, behaving in the right way. It's just using it as a different medium to convey the company's strategy and deliver the sales outcomes and results. So I like your end of your question, or is it some sort of combo? Yeah, it is some sort of combo, but it starts with leadership and it starts with an intent to develop a digital strategy.
Okay, great information. I got someone asked, can you recommend any software / apps that help you to monitor social media for mentions of your company name?
There are countless tools to help this, but I'd rather perhaps take a step back here and suggest that a tool is just another tool that someone might just been told to use and doesn't really get integrated into anything. If we're just getting started in digital, we can use the metrics that are built into platforms already. Facebook will show you how much reach you've got. Google Analytics will show you where your traffic's coming from. Your LinkedIn personal profile will show you your connection growth. It will show you your reach growth, your engagement growth as percentages. So rather than, I'm backtracking a little bit on the question, but rather than buying a specific tool, a tool won't be a silver bullet. I think there's enough information within the platforms themselves that once we get going with digital, we can see it develop, and that will inspire us again to go on. Then we can be inspired to build it into our CRM more, and then get a specific tool which measures the noise and chatter around the brand. But I just think we can get going quicker in the absence of a tool that tells us we're not really talking to anyone in the first place. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think if Eric's at ILMA in October and we haven't answered your question, maybe you can catch us and tell us we didn't answer it properly, or tell us we did. Let us know whether you'll be there, Eric, and we can hook up.
I got a series of questions from Andy, and he's a fan of yours. He follows you on LinkedIn, and I would encourage everyone to do that because you all provide a good example of best practices. So it's a way to learn what sharing meaningful content is all about. So I'm just going to give that little endorsement there. But Andy says, he has his strategy of sending emails, introducing products, and then if he doesn't get a reply, he sends a reminder or a phone call. And then he said, what what would be the next step? And just to add to this question, I will put it in another way. How quickly can the baby boomers shift to digitalization?
Okay, cool. So we like coupling our questions in, don't we? But that's all right. Thank you. It's, let me think. As the first step, I send emails. I mean, I guess I'd ask, why are you introducing your product or service to people who might not necessarily know who you are? Or are you just sending emails hoping that someone is the right decision maker in the buying frame of mind, has the specific problem, and they're ready to buy it right now? We're leaving it a lot to chance on that email hitting that inbox with the person in the right frame of mind to pick up the phone. So I wonder, not knowing enough about your business or your digital strategy, who are you sending those emails to? Are they wholly cold? And can you take a step back to showcase how you've helped other people, or how you understand that person's needs? We understand that in your industry, it frustrates you when things like this happen. In this article, I explain the top 3 ways that people just like you can overcome these frustrations using XYZ. Let me know if you'd like the article as an example. It's a very benign example, but it's more about putting your customers' needs and requirements first, not saying, as you say, this is our product, this is my business, engage with me. No, share with me some insights and I might want to engage with you beyond that. In terms of follow-ups?
No, I mean, all I would say in answer to this question is it's a little bit about courage as well, because we've become a little bit conditioned to think it's about prospecting is done in this way. And we think that this is the quickest way to get to a close. In reality, what you'll be finding, I imagine, is that you've got a very, very busy start of sales process and a very, very quiet end of sales process. So my suggestion would be just to try something different for a while. Nurture and build relationships with ideal customers. You'll probably sit around in that prospect phase a lot longer than you're comfortable to do. But if you are teaching these people things that they can't Google, they will come to you. It's going to take some courage for you to try this because you're used to doing things how you're used to doing them. But if I am a buyer receiving your approach, I am just ignoring it. That's the truth.
Yeah.
I think just in terms of the second question, how quickly can baby boomers shift or learn digitalization? I think as soon as you decide that you want to, it's a decision. And then I think it can be adapted very quickly. Platforms, digital, they want you to use them. They make them very easy. The use isn't the problem. The desire tends to be the issue, and perhaps a bit of impatience as well.
I have a really good question here from anonymous attendee again. Do you believe that AI will dilute the value of social media / digital selling or improve it? What evidence do you have that leads to your belief on this? On one hand, AI can generate more content. However, AI could make it less human to market it. What do you think?
Yeah, I think AI is a threat to authenticity. I think that's embedded in the question. We talk about very much, and we'll do this in Palm Springs in October. We talk about how authenticity is a really important part of nurturing relationships. I think AI presents us all sorts of risks. I think it was known that AI was going to reduce the number of B2B sales jobs because things were going to become artificially done. There is always a risk. But I think the key here is that AI will not be able to have a blended approach to sales. It will not be able to go offline. It will not be able to go meet your buyer when they are ready to have the conversation. So perhaps the question is, how do I, as well as integrating digital, how do I integrate AI into my responders, into my logical next step guide? How do I integrate AI so it improves my customer's buying journey? So when the time comes for them to pick up the phone to say, can we talk? It's assisted that journey more than put it at risk. And I think for me, that's where we've got to take AI. At the moment, you can read stuff. We don't even know if anybody's written it, who's written it. It could have been someone, a bot. I mean, it's bizarre what you can type in and get it to do. You get it to draw pictures for your kids and all sorts of things. It's clever. And I guess we're all still working our way around it. But to the question asker, I think the advantage we have in B2B sales is our buyers still want to have relationships when we have created enough value and when they're ready to buy. Let's make sure we integrate that into our sales processes and have it work for us instead of make it a risk.
Yeah, and I think there as well, there's the opportunity. I mean, we can't really say with any evidence, it's not been around long enough. I think these are all opinions and hunches. But I think there's a risk, in my opinion, it will make a lot of your competition lazy. They will churn out stuff which will flood a market. Google and other platforms will get wise and pick that up. So what an opportunity you have now to stand up as an actual human with authenticity to help people connect with you and not rely on it just being lazy to cover our digital strategy. We're actually owning it ourselves, and AI can support us in that, not absolve responsibility to it.
Because we're not real, are we?
No, we're robots.
Well, on that note, we have actually been here for about an hour now, and I want to thank Rob and Steve, and I want to mention once again that they will be at our annual meeting on Monday with a session at 2 p.m. And so we encourage you to check that out, along with all the other programming that we have planned for the meeting. Thank you so much. I want to thank our sponsor, Chevron Oronite, for their generous support of Lube Trends. And I am looking forward to the next session with you guys.
We are too.
Likewise. I mean, thank you again for inviting us along to contribute to your conference, to your event, to this town hall. We hope it's been of value to the attendees. Again, Chevron Oronite and yourselves, thank you very much for having us along.
Great. Thank you.
Take care, guys.